you automate your business. You find the right software tools and you hire the right people and you create systems and procedures, and then the business starts to run by itself. And then there's a learning curve and all that, because sometimes you think the business is running by itself and it's really
by
dying
itself.
from neglect. By itself, yeah, exactly.
I never walked away from solo ads. I just figure out a way to automate them in a way that it doesn't take up my day to day. Because, on one hand, it would be silly, in my opinion, to walk away from the money. On the other hand, I was also scared that if I completely rebrand myself and tell everybody I'm done with solo ads, which I had no reason to be because they work, I don't see a reason to walk away from them. But if people had the impression that I walked away, they would almost like abandon me. That was my feeling. You know what I mean? They wouldn't like necessarily want to hang out with me, so to speak, online anymore. So I had to be very conscious about adding that additional thing to the whole presence of mine with a new book and a new membership site without giving up the other stuff. But as much as it is a blessing in many ways to have a presence or positioning, and it's something that I get complimented a lot on. Actually, I was just talking to my really good friend, a really famous copywriter who you might actually know. He's been a bit on the back burner for the last few years, but he's really really famous in the copywriting circles. And he told me that he feels that I've done really well as far as positioning myself as an authority. You know, and as much as it is a blessing and a lot of work went into that and still goes into that every day, you know there's always a part of me that wants to do a passion project that isn't what I do every day, starting
Yeah.
a parenting related project, or starting a kind of a charm or charisma related project for people who aren't naturals, because growing up I would always hate on the one guy who'd be the natural. He'd usually be handsome, the girls would be all over him. He always knew the right thing to say. He could never go wrong. He could never embarrass himself. You know, he would be instantly forgiven for any mistakes he was making socially, while I felt like I really got the bad end of that stick, and every single mistake I made was multiplied and made fun of. So I spent a long time to sort of building myself up as an authority, as somebody who's with a presence, right? A guy with a presence. And now I can walk into a room and nobody will question whether I'm confident or not. Nobody will question whether I
Right.
got shit going on. So like I actually brainstormed the other day about like how nice would it be to build something like that and start helping guys around the world, be it in the corporate scene or entrepreneurs or just guys who don't have like a proper role model in their life, to get their shit together, so to speak. And
Yeah.
but the more I think about it, the more I was like, yeah, but I'll have to just abandon this because I can't do two things at once. So there's always the this push and pull with this idea.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that really kind of at the end of the day, it goes back to being like a true entrepreneur, right? And how do you evolve as an entrepreneur? That's actually how I wound up in that CEO position. How I wound up doing all these things like in the last couple of years was because you automate your business. You find the right software tools and you hire the right people and you create systems and procedures, and then the business starts to run by itself. And then there's a learning curve and all that, because sometimes you think the business is running by itself and it's really dying from
By
neglect.
itself.
By itself, yeah, exactly. uh, but that's where, that's where I like, that's how I feel right now, because I've got like 5 new docuseries opportunities that are right in front of me. And for me, the shift has been made from purely doing things from a profit motive, to really wanting to have impact, you know, positive impact specifically, to be able to affect cultural and societal change, because everybody knows that it's been rough these last few years, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. So that's where, I look at, these kind of questions of like, okay, how do I systematize? How do I run a lean business over here so that I don't lose traction on this thing that's working? How do I spin up this new thing that's a passion of mine? And then how do I unify the messaging so that my, personal brand is doesn't seem like it's schizophrenic, like that, like there's actually some continuity between all these ideas. And that's where I find myself at, is, there's some really big opportunities on my horizon, and it's how do I unify them, and how do I take advantage of them, um, without, creating so much chaos that everything just falls apart. But that's also just, the fate of the entrepreneur. Like, we always want to push the boundary, we always want to do more, we always want to, take it to the next level. And I think that the second that you become afraid of losing, like that's okay, maybe not when you become afraid, when you allow the fear of losing to then determine what your next steps are, that's whenever you start to lose some of that, that thing that makes an entrepreneur great. Because you have to be pushing the boundaries. And I've put everything on the line so many times now that, like, it's not unusual for me to be like teetering on the brink of like, okay, like these things need to work out, or like we're gonna be we're gonna be scrambling to figure something out. And I don't know, I'm rambling and chasing some, strange path here, but really that's kind of the state of my current life, as an entrepreneur, is like, okay, like I've figured out these things that work. The list building lifestyle is absolutely like a real thing. Like, when you have an email list, you aren't going to go hungry. Um, so then what then are you going to do with your life? And thus this, long and rambling rant.
um, what is your next project? Do you already have a project in mind?
I actually have, like five of them on the horizon, in addition to, like, potentially doing more joint ventures, with my previous partners. So I really, actually, I don't want to talk about them.
Sure.
There, yeah, there's a couple of them are in, discussions right now that should remain confidential.
Right.
Um, and but they'll all, either be themed along the lines of, like financial, success, entrepreneurialism, investing, or, really focused on cultural and societal issues.
No, that's solid, man. That's really solid. Um, and I really think more independent documentaries should be produced because a lot of this stuff is probably funded by different media channels, etc. That kind of push a different message. I really enjoyed the real Fauci. um, that one that was eye opening because naturally I was like I knew it, because I was one of the guys who didn't believe and didn't buy into any of that stuff. Like here in Canada, people went nuts over vaccines and stuff, and they wanted to vaccinate kids too. And I said there's no way. There's just no way they came up with a vaccine so fast and it's effective, etc. And I actually seen my dad go through a really terrible complication of almost dying. He actually lost his brain function for a little bit. He
Dang.
couldn't talk. He was just going like kind of making weird sounds, and he couldn't recognize any family members, and like it was stupid. And Israel. My dad lives in Israel. Israel was the first to sign a contract with Pfizer,
Mm,
right? So there's a lot of people in Israel, a lot of kids too, who got hurt because of all this. So the real Fauci was a great piece in my opinion. But it's funny. Even when I show it to one of my best friends who was pro vaccines,
yeah,
it still doesn't convince him of anything.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Even after all this time, even after him taking a couple of vaccine shots, um, you know, it's just the world is now people just believe whatever they want to believe. There's no facts anymore that you can present to anyone about anything.
it's insane. And that's where, like, that's actually one of, in particular, one of the projects that I'm about to start. That's the question that I actually woke up thinking about this morning, is like, um, praying about, literally. I'm like, Lord, how do I get people to see the truth? Like, how do I actually break through? Because it can't just be like, there's got to be some way of speaking to people that will get them to see the truth. And it can't just be facts, because of what you're saying. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you can, and we all like to think we're immune to it. Like, but I'm sure I have at least some of that in my own, psyche or whatever. That, um, there are things that I just want to believe, and I've figured out why, and that's where I'm trying to figure out with this docuseries format, is like, how can I, actually change people's minds? Like, and I know I'm never going to
Isn't
get.
that a question every copywriter asks themselves?
Yeah, but probably for a more profit-driven motive.
Yeah,
um,
probably.
yeah, yeah. I'm definitely, and I'm definitely a capitalist. The profit's got to be there. The wheels don't keep turning. But, I have kids, and, you know, family, and I don't want the world to continue to break down the way it seems to right now, and see, like, hate, creeping back into, like, the mainstream consciousness, and, like, this group against that group, and, like, all this division, that's largely manufactured, but also, the result of propaganda, and abuse of, persuasion and influence and rhetoric, using logical fallacies, all these things. Like, I want to, I don't know, man. I think, you may have caught this in Uncensored Crypto, but, like, I think we, as entrepreneurs and, individuals, like, we're going to have to be the ones who solve these problems, because the government is not going to do it. Like, there's no government or politician that set out to be a politician. Maybe there are reluctant politicians who will solve things, but, it's up to entrepreneurs. Like, we're supposed to be solving the major problems of the world, and, uh, you know,
I don't think the politicians. I don't think their number one priority on like their daily agenda does not include an item list that says "make the world a better place." I genuinely believe there's no such agenda. A lot of it has to do with just being cogs in the system and trying to either preserve their own existence in that system so they can keep climbing that ladder, or advancing in the system. And the system itself is built in a way to preserve itself.